Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. Today we're exploring a truly fascinating question. How is the Arab world actually viewing the recent conflict between Iran and Israel? On the surface, you might assume, well, a clear-cut choice of sides, perhaps. But as we've discovered, the reality is far more intricate, far more nuanced than any headline suggests.
Exactly. We've been immersed in a recent article from The Economist that coined a really striking phrase describing this conflict as a new spectator sport in the Arab world.
And Mark?
They're marked, they say, by a surprising lack of sympathy for either side. But alongside that, we've pulled together a wealth of additional reporting, analysis that offers a much richer, perhaps more unsettling picture of the region's true mood beneath that surface.
Right. So our goal today is to really unpack this idea of spectator status and maybe test its very limits. We'll explore what The Economist captures so well, because it does capture something, but also where its framing might simplify things or even, entirely miss crucial details. What you'll hopefully walk away with is a deeper, more textured understanding of the complex motivations, the underlying fears, and, well, the high-stakes calculations at play across the Arab states. It's a dynamic situation, isn't it? And you're about to see just how precarious it all feels.
Let's start right where The Economist began its observation. This war, it feels profoundly different across the Arab world this time. They highlight these viral social media clips, particularly from Lebanon, showing what you can only really call missile-watching parties, even weddings where guests are filming Iranian missiles streaking across the night sky. It's quite something. These videos, often shared under hashtags like hashtag Meanwhile in Lebanon and hashtag SkyShow. I mean, it almost sounds like a macabre kind of entertainment, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, yeah. And what's fascinating here is that this isn't just like an isolated anecdote. Our background reporting confirms these videos were pretty widespread. They hinted a kind of profound detachment, maybe. Perhaps even a coping mechanism born from years and years of instability, rather than any genuine excitement or cheerleading for either side. Yeah. The piece really captures a novel feeling of relief in the Arab world, a sense that, as The Economist put it, for once, it does not involve Arab countries, at least not yet. It's a collective, if maybe nervous sigh of, thank goodness it's not us directly this time.
Yeah, not yet being the operative phrase, perhaps. The article also observes, quite understandably, a distinct lack of sympathy for Israel. I mean, given the ongoing devastating situation in Gaza, that's not a huge surprise to anyone who's been following the region, right? For some in the Arab world, the images of those ballistic missiles potentially heading for Israeli cities might have felt like a form of, well, delayed justice, maybe. But what The Economist really emphasizes, and what's maybe far less obvious, is the equally striking lack of sympathy for Iran. They suggest a strong sense of schadenfreude, that German term for taking grim satisfaction in someone else's misfortune toward Iran's perceived weakness, especially after Israel's apparent ease in penetrating Iran's vaunted security services. That must have raised eyebrows.
Well, absolutely, yes. That schadenfreude is definitely a recurring theme in other reports as well, particularly regarding the embarrassment of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. I mean, think about it. Iran spent decades building this vast network of proxies in Arab countries, meant to be its forward defense, its shield. Yet Israel appeared to penetrate Iran's own backyard security with remarkable ease. That irony, that perceived vulnerability of a once feared hegemon, it's indeed a source of considerable, maybe quiet glee in some circles. The article specifically notes a distinct joy in Syria over the demise of IRGC commanders, who were deeply involved in their brutal civil war. And there's that powerful image described a man bringing a box of sweets to the empty Iranian embassy in Damascus. There's a dark, morbid humor to that, isn't there? Especially after a decade of brutality and, well, hundreds of thousands of lives lost.
Wow. So, on the surface, the immediate reaction is this strange mix of relief, detachment, maybe even a bit of dark humor. But as we dig deeper, what unexpected complexities or, hidden dynamics start to emerge that challenge this initial observation? Is war as light entertainment really the full story?
No, not at all. Not really. While there's perhaps a certain grim satisfaction in seeing two hegemons clash from a distance, the idea of war as light entertainment can be profoundly misleading. I think that's fair to say. Our field of reportage consistently stresses profound fatigue and just deep-seated trauma in places like Syria and Lebanon, not excitement. One journalist noted that for many, the sight of distant explosions triggers not excitement, but a shudder of familiar dread from countless previous conflicts, PTSD almost. For many Arabs, any major power clash, particularly one involving such significant regional players, is seen not as a distant show, but as a potential precursor to disaster in their own streets, something that could very easily spill over and engulf them. That fear is palpable.
So the spectator sport metaphor, while catchy, it might actually underplay a far deeper undercurrent of anxiety and, frankly, fear.
Precisely. Yeah. And this leads us directly to where the Economist's framing might oversimplify things a bit. The article claims little sympathy for Iran across the Arab world. And while popular sentiment might indeed lean that way, especially among those who suffered directly from Iran's proxy actions, Gulf governments, for example, they show far more tactical caution and pragmatism than open glee, that's clear. What we see from our broader materials that Saudi Arabia, for instance, has condemned both U.S.-Israeli strikes and Iranian threats, urging de-escalation from all sides, publicly at least. The leadership in the United Arab Emirates is calling for dialogue, stability, prosperity, not celebrating Iran's difficulties. And privately, we hear the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC states, are deeply wary of using their bases for further raids, fearing severe economic fallout. This isn't just a lack of sympathy. It reveals a far more pragmatic and fundamentally fearful stance than simply disliking one side. It's self-preservation.
That truly reframes the narrative, doesn't it? It's not just about who you like or dislike or who you ideologically align with. It's about who poses an immediate, tangible threat to your nation's stability and, crucially, your economic future. That seems key. The article also touches on a split in Arab media, noting that Al Jazeera is broadly sympathetic to Iran in its coverage, while Saudi-run outlets are, quote, unexpectedly measured.
Yes, and The Economist attributes Al Jazeera's stance to Qatar's shared gas field with Iran and its long-standing hostility to Israel, which is, well, a plausible explanation. Makes sense. But it implies the Saudi restraint is purely ideological, a tactical deference that could simply flip if, say, the Iranian regime were to fall. Our background material suggests a much sharper point. Saudi outlets have muted their usual, often very aggressive anti-Tehran drumbeat, not just out of some abstract tactical deference, but out of direct economic self-interest, specifically to stay off Iran's target list. You remember the 2019 attacks on Saudi oil facilities? That's still fresh in their minds. Economic nerves mattered just as much as, if not more than, ideology in shaping state policy and even the narratives put forth by state-affiliated media. This highlights a crucial, often overlooked driver. In the Middle East, economic pragmatism frequently trumps ideological alignment. It shapes state policy and even public narratives.
That is a profound insight, really. It completely challenges the assumption that media narratives neatly map onto state policy, or that state policy is purely ideologically driven. There's a deeper, more tangible, and often, well, self-serving motivation at play. The article also suggests that this war, and particularly Israel's effective response, has erased any lingering doubt about Israel's regional hegemony. Is that fair?
Well, while Israel's strikes do indeed reveal significant military and intelligence reach, calling it uncontested hegemony, maybe that's stretching it a bit, the way the article implies. See, when we look at the broader picture, the ongoing war in Gaza, the rising risk to global shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, the potential for Red Sea disruptions by Iran's proxies, all these things reinforce Israel's image as a destabilizer, not just a powerful player. Gulf analysts, in fact, they fear Tel Aviv almost as much as they fear Tehran, but for purely market reasons, the direct impact on business and investment, that's their bottom line. As one Emirati academic quoted in the article explains, while Israel is scary and powerful, its growing strength is also a source of growing concern, making it a main source of instability in the region. It's a paradox, really. Powerful, yes, but a force for calm. Far from it, many would argue.
Okay, this brings us to some truly important assumptions from The Economist's piece that maybe need challenging. One is that this spectator status for the Arab world is sustainable in the long term. Seems unlikely, right? And another is that Israel's apparent show of force automatically equals long-term deterrence.
Exactly, yes. The article also implies that no Arab involvement exists, at least not yet. But that's another area where the picture is far more complex and, frankly, concerning. Iran's established proxy infrastructure, we're talking about groups like the Houthis in Yemen, Iraqi militias, and the formidable Hezbollah in Lebanon, they are already signaling readiness to act. It's not hypothetical. The Houthis, for instance, have hinted they might resume Red Sea drone harassment specifically to aid Iran. And remember, just the vows of Iranian retaliation saw Brent crude prices jump 18% in 10 days. That shows you the market sensitivity. These proxy networks are the real tripwires, aren't they? And their activation could very easily pull Arab states from the comfortable, albeit nervous, sidelines directly into the fray. It's an interconnected web, not just isolated incidents happening over there.
So if it's not simply a distant match on television, how should we fundamentally understand this conflict and the region's complex reaction to it? What's the alternative reading that emerges when we combine these different perspectives and really try to connect the dots?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, We can view this less as a simple match between two opponents and maybe more as a slow-motion regional system test. The underlying currents, the deepest drivers, they're not just about military power or ideological clashes, but about economic nerves. Pure and simple. Just imagine this scenario, a choke in the Strait of Hormuz or a serious flare-up in the Red Sea that could hit Dubai's ports hard, instantly jeopardize Riyadh's ambitious Vision 2030 IPOs. Their massive economic diversification and investment plans could go up in smoke overnight. These immediate, tangible economic fears drive state policy just as much as, if not more than, historical grievances or ideological leanings. Money talks.
And what about the role of information in all this? You mentioned the viral parties. It feels like perceptions are incredibly important here.
Oh, they are. That's another fascinating layer and a critical one. The information spaces across the region are incredibly splintered, fragmented. Those viral parties, the social media clips we discussed, they coexist right alongside sophisticated AI-generated fakes and highly organized disinformation campaigns. It's a real mess to untangle. This makes it incredibly difficult to pin down a single monolithic public mood. You just can't. It's not monochrome, which challenges another of the article's implied assumptions that there's one singular Arab sentiment. What's fascinating, and maybe worrying, here is how multiple, even contradictory narratives can exist simultaneously, shaping a reality that's far more fragmented than a simple spectator sport suggests.
This paints a much more precarious picture than simply a spectator sport, definitely. So what's the ultimate takeaway for someone trying to understand what's truly happening on the ground and in the halls of power across the Middle East? What should they hold on to?
Look, The Economist is correct that many Arabs might relish seeing two erstwhile hegemons bleeding each other out, a sort of poetic justice perhaps for past grievances. There's truth to that. But the deeper regional mood, I think, is best described as nervous spectatorship. That feels more accurate. Arab governments are condemning and urging de-escalation, not primarily because they're taking some moral high ground, but precisely because they fear becoming collateral damage themselves. It's rational self-interest. Gulf markets have already priced in a significant war premium, essentially extra costs and risks added to investments due to the heightened conflict reflecting very real, tangible anxiety. The money is nervous. And crucially, as we've seen, proxy escalation paths are wide open, and these could erase any comfort of being a spectator literally overnight.
Right. It sounds like while the article captures the immediate surface optics quite well, its bigger blind spot might be underestimating how quickly and how painfully the Arab sidelines can turn into the front lines. So what should we be watching for next then? What's the critical question that remains hanging in the air?
I think the key question for you, the listener, to consider is this. In a region where economic stability is absolutely paramount for future prosperity, and where these deeply entrenched proxy networks offer so many ready-made opportunities for escalation, how long can the illusion of detached spectatorship truly last? And more importantly, what happens when the economic anxieties and the proxy war vectors really intertwine? What does that look like?
A powerful thought to leave you with, indeed. This isn't just a conflict happening over there. It's clearly a dynamic test of regional resilience, with implications that ripple far beyond the immediate front lines. We hope this exploration has given you a more nuanced understanding of what is truly a complex and evolving situation. Thanks for joining us on the Economist in Your Ear podcast.